Again, anyway. The iOS and Android development classes both begin on September the 23rd, coming up, and they both cover the introduction plus to developing iOS and Android applications. The iOS program requires that you have a Macintosh, and the Macintosh should be able to run the new operating system Lion with the second to newest operating system Lion, 10.7 or above. And you can run Mountain Lion too. If you have the opportunity to get Mountain Lion before the class starts or during the class, you can do that. That will allow you to go further beyond the class. As Apple releases new software, they release it one or two, compatibility with one or two releases of the older operating system. So moving forward, if you can move up to Mountain Lion at this point, you're probably good for the development environment for, it's hard to say, but usually about a year is what Apple has. You're also required to have an iOS device. That means a 4th generation iPod Touch, an iPhone 3GS, 4 or 4S or 5, or any one of the iPads currently. As time moves on and we get to things which are iOS 6 specific, it'll require an iPad 2 or the new iPad or the iPad Mini. iOS 6 is not supported on the original iPad. For the Android developer class, the requirements aren't quite as strict because Android is a little bit more platform agnostic when it comes to doing development. Android can be developed on a Linux platform. It can be developed on Macintosh. It can be developed on Windows XP or Windows 7. I'm not sure about Windows 8 yet. I haven't seen anybody trying to do development on Windows 8, although I'm sure that it will probably be supported because the Windows 8 for Intel should support the Java Development Kit. And Android depends upon the Java language and Java Development Kit being installed to support the software development kit. In the Android class, the object is about the same. It's intro to slightly advanced application development, right from the very beginning of installing the software development kits, software development environments, right on up to the production of an app. The final project for the class, for the Android and for the iOS class, both, is for the student to actually produce an app, which you've learned how to build from your lessons in the class. And that demonstrates that you've mastered the material that we've covered in the class. Both the Android and the iOS class are 8 weeks of instruction. The 8 weeks of instruction it's an online format. The material is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the lesson materials are released in 1 week increments, which means that usually on a Wednesday of each week, new material will be released for the succeeding week, for the next week coming up. And you'll have that week to do those assignments. Plus, the assignments are usually due on actually 13 days after they've been assigned, so things are due the end of the second week after they've been assigned. So you essentially have 2 weeks to do some of the assignments. In the early part of the class, that's too much time. In the early part of the class, it won't take you 2 weeks to do it. In the latter part of the class, as we approach and go beyond the 8th week of the class, it will require more time. In each of the classes, the final project app is due no later than 8 weeks after the end of the class. So after the 8-week instructional period, you have an additional 8 weeks, up to additional 8 weeks, to complete the assignment by designing an installable app. And in both the iOS and the Android classes, the app should be installable, meaning you can not only run it on the simulator or the emulator, but actually install it on a piece of hardware and have it perform as a device. The Apple program allows you to have it offers you membership, invites you membership into the Apple Development Code. And the membership gives you the same access as developers get to all of Apple's release materials. So not only do you have the course materials that we cover in class, but you have access to all of Apple's tutorials, their references, their sample code, and of course best practices, all the things that Apple has developed. The Google class isn't quite that structured or formal. Those information is available generally at developer.android.com. The Apple stuff is the information is a little more curated from Apple's point of view, because Apple has its proprietary interest where the Android operating system and the Android software development kit are offered as open source, developed by Google. Okay, do you have any questions so far?
So Tim, on the Android course, is it just developing applications and installing them on an Android device, or will we be able to learn how to integrate and extend, legacy type applications for the Android platform?
Well, give me an example. What kind of a legacy? You mean going from like 1.5 up to 4.1, going from the older operating system up to Jelly Bean, or are you talking about porting legacy Java applications?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, if you have a Java application and you want to extend that to the Android platform, right? So that your users can use their Android devices to access the application, things like that.
Yeah, the portability is covered generally, not specifically.
Okay.
Because what we're using Eclipse, which is a sort of a default development environment for Java anyway, and we're using the ADT plugins. So code that's written in Java should be pretty easily ported to your device. So I mean, you have to understand that you're in a mobile environment, but the actual code base is pretty similar.
Okay.
And we do go through that, but we don't emphasize. We have no concentration on porting, but you should, as you learn to use the Eclipse environment and how to compile the code for the Android device, you should be able to port applications, and that should be something you should be able to do.
Okay. Because, when I look at some of the applications, for instance, the Papa John's Pizza website, right? They have a website which has, a slightly advanced functionality. Then they have the Android version of their application, which is a scaled-down version, but you can still order what you need to order, right?
Right.
In terms of their products, and so I was just thinking, will we learn that, if you have an existing application and then, bringing a scaled-down version into the Android platform and being able to communicate back with the older application?
Well, we talk about communicating back to the original application.
Integrating back to the same database. That is,
that shouldn't be a problem. Database integration is no problem at all. Most of the time, what we end up with in differences in mobile apps and the full-blown app is two restrictions. One, of course, is restriction of the hardware, and the other one is with Android. You've got kind of a large target. You have to make your applications so that essentially now they'll run on 2.2 devices up to 4.1 devices.
Right.
And sometimes that limits what you can do in the mobile environment, because you're covering several releases, more than several. You're covering a bunch of releases of the software development kit.
Okay. And what about the design of the user interface? Are we covering that in the
Yes,
Android?
the design of the user interface is one of the things that we actually concentrate on.
Okay.
User interface design has actually become a specialty apart from mobile applications, because user interface design is very important as far as the intuitive nature of apps and how you can use them. That's covered pretty extensively, along with the actual coding of the different functions and the different things that you want to do. There are a lot of do's and don'ts you should follow in the mobile field, and they're a little bit less as well defined for Android as they're with Apple. Apple's had its human interface guidelines for a long time, and they have a certain way of setting up their user interfaces, which has been very successful for them. With the Android, they don't quite have the history of that type of user interface design or engineering. It's coming, but it's not quite there yet. So there is a little bit more flexibility in designing user interface, especially when we're not exactly sure what is going to work the best. Once it's designed, the best thing to do is still hand it to beta testers and let other people, other pairs of eyes, look at the application to see if it's intuitive to them also. Okay.
And I think the only difference between the iOS and the Android course is that for iOS, you have to buy an Apple Macintosh or, one of those machines, right, before you can actually start developing.
Yeah, that and a device. And you need a Macintosh computer because there hasn't been an emulator that anyone's ever tried in class or that I've tried who can support the Xcode environment.
Right.
You need a device onto which to install your applications. And again, that also comes with a membership to the Apple developers. So there's sort of an integration between Apple's production, commercially available resources for hardware. For development, Xcode, and the actual hardware you deploy onto the iOS devices themselves.
Okay.
You need Apple branded hardware for that course.
Okay. And both the courses are fully online, correct?
Yes, both courses are fully online. And the material is available all the time, except for the last 4 weeks of each class. We're going to conduct live chat or conference sessions. For an hour for one night a week. So we discuss live some of the issues that might be coming up or some of the features that people might want to add to their programs. Because as we progress through the course, we get closer and closer to people coming up with an idea for an app, submitting to me a proposal for an app, going through it to make sure that it's something which can be done, which is doable. And then as people run into problems or think of new ways of implementing features, we discuss that live.
Okay.
Typically, that's 8:30 to 9:30 on Eastern Time on a Wednesday night and a Thursday night. That's what it's been in the past. That's what we anticipated being for this upcoming class too. For both classes, Wednesday for the Android and Thursday for the iPhone class is the latest schedule yet.
Wednesday was for Android, you said?
Wednesday is Android, and 8:30 to 9:30 Eastern Time, and Thursday is for the iOS.
Okay. Yeah, I'm planning to, enroll in one of the other courses you have, the cloud computing piece.
Oh, right,
I just want to make sure that I don't clash with that course. I'm going to check on that.
Well, I believe the cloud computing is all in class, I think. Whereas this one is online, which means that it's it doesn't take away the amount of time you need to spend or the difficulty of the subject matter, but it does give you a little flexibility in scheduling, either between sitting in a classroom with instruction or the time that you can spend outside of the classroom doing in an online environment.
Okay.
Right. I've had another question here, and the other question is asking how is online learning done in this class? From a student who is new to the process and wondering if they would have a hard time. Now, online learning is, I wouldn't say online learning is more difficult than classroom learning, but it is entirely different. It's often said the best thing about online learning is you don't have to go to class. Well, sometimes the worst thing about online learning is that you don't have to go to class. There's a certain discipline in going into an environment where it's dedicated to a certain task, and that task may be the study of subject matter. But because as we get older and we have obligations, we go to work, we have other things we have to do, getting together in a classroom environment isn't always an option. It can be very difficult to do. And for those people, the online environment can be a viable option. In an online environment, you are somewhat isolated from the rest of your students. While we do have forums and we have the live chats where people can get together and actually discuss things, a lot of the work is done, it depends upon your self-motivation. When assignments are given, when it's necessary to get them done. When you're in a classroom situation, sometimes the motivation to get them done is a little bit greater than if you're at home where other priorities can jump in between you and the work that's done. Whether or not someone would actually be successful in that really depends upon the level of dedication and whether or not you can work well independently. Now, while there probably is more direct support between the instructors and students in the online formats that we use, meaning that you can ask a question any time of the day and your question will generally be answered later that day or by the next day, or your discussion will be addressed, whereas in a classroom environment, if you have a Tuesday or Thursday class or a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, those types of questions and concerns may not be addressed until the next time you have a class. So there is a pretty immediate availability of instructors for questioning and discussion in the online environment. But the online environment does require a certain independence and motivation that sometimes the regular classroom environment doesn't require.